All right, welcome to Real Outdoors. Captain Adam here, Captain Jeremy on the other side. We're excited to be in Stevensville, Michigan today, and we have a great group of guys and some great topics. So,
Hi, I'm Matt Wing from Lakavea Sport Fishing Team. Our home port is Grand Haven, Michigan.
I'm Captain Jerry Link. I run 36 Tierra out of St. Joseph, Michigan, and I run Originator Sport Fishing Charters year-round.
Captain Adam here, Real Outdoors, and we have a great topic for you with our great guests. Thanks for being here, guys. We got to give a shout out though to Captain Chucks for everything they do for us. You can check them out at Captain Chucks on the internet with this nice little website. I don't even try to say it anymore. I just put it at the bottom of the screen. Don't get yelled at. And also, we got to thank Bush Latte because they taste good and they help us out too. Every time I drink one of those, I just think to myself, man, that's good.
It is good.
It's like coffee.
A jelly donut would go really well.
Jelly donut and a Bush Light. I don't know if I've ever had a jelly donut and a Bush Light, but I'm going to try it.
That's my favorite
I'll call you when I'm out there. Hey,
yeah.
you were right.
Yeah.
All right, so this topic that we're going to talk about here is just basically our rotator setups. Meat rigs, whirly gigs, spinning glows, whatever you got, and also flies. And maybe kind of where you like to run them, what's your approach, and your lead length, exactly what hook you're using. You can give me all that information, and I won't share it with anyone. But all right, I'll let Jerry, you want to kick her off here?
Yeah, I guess. So I run a lot of the 8-inch Dreamweaver spin doctors. I've got mine, like, I have the advantage of a bigger boat. I have a table which I have my marks on, but the general rule of thumb is like what three times the length. So it's I believe that's what it is. I just stretch it out on my table. I cut them all down below. I like to run either a Gamakatsu or a Owner, either one. They're good hooks.
Sorry.
It's all right. And king fishing, I think it's important. Sometimes I did them both ways, but having this little stinger hook here, I think really helps hold on to them a little bit better. Probably, if I had to pick my number one spinny, if I was king fishing for big fish, if I was 3-3 looking, I would probably say white, either a white crush or white slick, day in and day out. For just numbers of fish, I think I'd probably go with that, like more of the green on green. But if I'm looking for big fish, I'm usually going to have something white or a white paddle, something like that. Pickled sunshine. Like that.
Never heard of that.
So.
Pickled sunshine, you say?
Yeah, and I would copy that. Hands down, my favorite spin doctor is white with slick tape and a pickle or liquid sunshine fly. They like it, feed it to them.
Yeah, there might be one of those in the water on my boat on occasion or daily. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I run kind of similar. I mix the flashers up quite a bit though, depending on the day. Like I'm very prone to run the small 8-inch paddles. The last few years, this is the flip fin, the new from Dreamweaver last year, with the adjustable fin that you pull out and it runs either with a fin or without a fin, which I do like. I'd say that I probably usually run them without the fin, but not always. But that I think is a nice addition to the lineup. I also run some Salmon Candy 8-inch paddles and 8-inch paddles and flies. But historically, I kind of cut my teeth in this game, kind of being a meat fisherman. I learned to fish cut bait in 1999 in Lake Huron. Some guys had been out west, and that was the first summer that I ever saw it here. And we had really basic setups, running big 11-inch paddles and flashers. And meat rigs, we were using Lure Jensen little squids that we could buy, the little 2 or 3-inch squids with oaky Challenger bait heads that didn't roll at all out of the package. I mean, you had to tune, and you had to heat them up to get them to stay that way, and they were really not good, really not good bait heads. And it's really evolved a lot since that time. We've gone away from the bigger paddles and bigger spin doctors to running even on 8-inch, 8-inch spinnies. So I run a lot of meat, a heavy meat program. If there's kings around, I'm fishing meat. As soon as the water cracks about 50 degrees, almost always got at least one in the water. But if they're biting meat, I'll have it on every rod. So I would say I run significantly more meat rigs than I do flies overall.
Yeah, I think it's changed in the last few years. I used to be heavy meat fisherman, and now I've kind of gotten back into flies, but I've extended the lengths of my flies. So you said 3 times, like, on my 8-inch, I'm running 28-inch flies, and all the way out to 52, 6 to 60-inch, just depending. But I kind of made when meat rigs were working constantly, I'm like, well, why did these flies stop working? So I just started extending my fly lengths out to be the same as the meat rigs, and found that whatever that does slows the action of the fly down, or whatever it's doing back there. That definitely increased my bites on flies. But yeah, I would say the meat game now is so much better than it was. There was not very many options back in the day, and there wasn't a lot of consistency in it. And you were cutting all your own bait if you could find bait.
That's what caused me to gravitate away from it. Is I used to like I fished all the red, blue, purple, green label stuff and cut it myself.
Yeah.
And that's just not as readily available now. And you got that A cut side off of one of those, and that was dynamite.
Matt, I will say that the big one, the herring that they produced last year was the first year they've done herring, and not the Elwet. And that big one herring and it's all pre-cut, so it strips. It is a little bit pricey, if you're on a heavy bite, but the strips hold up pretty well. And their herring it really is spectacular. It's like that old blue and green label that we used to get, or like historically we got that Rise Davis meat that was like in the tubs and it smelled like the ocean. That stuff it was really, really good, but this is like 20 years ago now. But that big one herring is the best bait I've seen in probably a solid decade.
Okay.
And it's readily available. Tackle shops around here are carrying it. I know Captain Chuck's has it. I don't know if Charlie carries it down here or not, but I know that they carry it at what's the place in South Haven? Tackle Haven. Tackle Haven has it. But yeah, I would definitely highly recommend checking out the new herring from the big one. It's solid.
And that's not needed to be refrigerated.
That is not
Or
necessarily
so they say.
the case. Yeah, it's best to be kept cold. It's okay if it sits out. It's not going to spoil because it does have some preservation. But I find that it holds up better if it stays cold. So it doesn't get it just stays more firm, and it'll last more bites if you keep it cold. So I always keep it cold.
Can't just keep it in the gunnel until the next day.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. I have to tell you a story about that sometime. About somebody that found a cat in their boat.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't leave your bait in your gunnel.
One tip I'll give when I'm running meat, the strips. I tend to trim the tail end off. You can adjust your head. All the different heads allow you to adjust your length or leader from your hooks. But if you don't trim that tail off, if it's in the water a while, you pull it up, you'll find that tail's wrapped around this back treble, and that affects how this rolls in the water. So I'm trimming those strips probably a 1/2 inch on the back. So
We keep a pair of sharp scissors on the back, and every piece of bait that goes in the water, we trim them, and then we put it in the water. And that's one thing I think, if you can't just buy meat right out of the package, stick it in a meathead, put it overboard, and hope it's going to catch fish. It doesn't work that way. You might get lucky and it might work, but almost invariably, I put a meat rig in the water, and even my guys will everyone kind of is trained to this now, but we look at it and make sure that it's rolling, make sure it looks good. If it's back there helicoptering, it's not going to get bit. If it's not rolling at all, a lot of times they'll just pull straight through the water behind the flasher. They're not turning over. you really want that fast kick at the bottom and a slow roll over the top and another fast kick, and that's what they bite. You know, that's that wounded bait fish look. That's where you'll get your bites if you see that your meat is actually, you know, rolling correctly in the water, and you have to pay attention to that detail.
Yeah, I think, you know, so when I got into the meat fishing, it was Kenny from KRW up in Manistee, and he kind of took us under his wing and showed us, you know, how to brine, how to cut them, and then how to tune it and make it all work. And he always said when you put that in the water, you want it to have a pretty even roll to where it's not like kicking crazy one direction or anything like that, but you want it to be just about 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000, 4/1000. And I really think if you can get it to where it kicks and it pauses,
Yeah.
and that kicks and it pauses, but you're still on that 1 second RPM of rotation,
Yeah.
or revolutions per second, like one revolution, that is, you know,
That's a sweet spot.
the sweet spot is if you can make it have a little pause in the bottom.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Like that fast kick, and then it kind of hangs up a little bit, and then it does it again. You know, it kind of sits at the top a little bit, and then it, you know, roll back at the bottom. And I think if you tune them that way, the success rate with it goes up, you know, significantly.
And I'm one of the people that likes to experiment, maybe we'll call it. So like most of my stuff has random pieces of tape stuck to it, or, you know, I like to write messages on rotators so the fish can read that and then make a decision if they want to mess with me or not. I don't know if that really has anything to do with it. It might have more to do with bush light, but I have experimented with running 4 teasers instead of 3,
Yeah.
2 teasers instead of 3. I haven't found the number of teasers. 3 seems to be the magic spot. But making them longer has actually produced fish, especially I think when the bite gets a little tougher. Also running naked heads, no teasers, just a, you know, 60-inch lead to a head. And we've even done it to where we've run a head as a stack, and no rotator, just stacking it on a downrigger.
Yeah.
And as long as you have the rotation right,
Especially with whole bait.
it's good.
I think whole bait does really
Really
well in a clean head, you know, no rotator. Usually on a, you call it a stack, I call it a slider, but
Well, you guys, I don't know if you've ever been to Grand Haven, but people are just a little different in Grand Haven. And they have their own terminology that they've made up, and they think that the rest of us are wrong. But somebody from, I think it was Lake Ontario or
it was Casey.
Lake Huron or somebody, oh yeah, it was.
It's Casey.
In the out and down.
Yeah, he's out and down. He's like losing his mind every time
Losing
they say out and down.
I just love it. Out and down. The out and down's going, Casey, grab that one. It is funny though, like the terminology is so different from everywhere. But so what's your approach for running rotators? What are you looking at? What makes you want to run a rotator? Maybe you don't run rotators hardly at all. I don't know.
We run quite a bit of them. I think I like them the way they go through the water. I think they produce really well. I mean, I'm not afraid to put them on coppers. I'm not afraid to put them on riggers or divers. I definitely gonna have them on divers. You know, if the fishing's tough, I want my divers. You know, the rest of them I don't care as much about. But I definitely, it depends on the depth of water I'm fishing, obviously too. But if we're offshore, we got a full spread out. I mean, they're probably gonna be on every rod. So, and from the, you know, probably like 50 foot down, that'll be rotators.
Well,
Yeah, that's I usually don't fish them in the top half of the water column. It's got to be 50 foot and deeper.
With the exception of the baby ones for coho, they're really good for coho.
so I'll just get, like, I don't really ever talk about this. I probably should just not talk about it. But if you get the baby ones and you get them in like normal salmon patterns and you run meat rigs behind them, they work.
Mhm.
Just throw that out there. That's all the information you get from them.
I would say the same thing.
And they'll
on
work
the-
up high in the water column.
Yeah, so I was I'm glad you said something because I was gonna talk about I run the small weenie paddles. I think they're the 8-inchers. I guess they're 8. They're little ones. With meat rigs up high in the water column, like on a 7 color, on a 5 color. There are days when that presentation is really, really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
Especially when you have that like first hard setting of the thermocline,
Yeah.
and you kind of have that weird part of the water column where it's colder than it should be, but it's not really cold yet, and it's up in that 35-foot range. That's where it came from for me. Was I bought some of those big weenie ones. Actually, Steve picked them up. He was working in Muskegon, and they had them all over the place down here or down there, and he brought some back, and we were running them with meat rigs on them and catching fish. And I'm like, I wonder if those little spin dodgers. So I went to Dreamweaver and got, Pearl Glow on White and Kevin's Girlfriend and a Blue Bubble, and they all really produced well. But it was definitely, they had their moments.
Yeah.
But it was I wouldn't be afraid to recommend people try it, especially when the water's just starting to set up.
Give that a try.
Unless you're fishing at a tournament against us, then don't try it. And turn your GPS tracking on your phone if you don't mind.
Yeah, and then send you a message.
I approach rotators, I think, as a tool more so than just necessarily like I'm trying to definitely catch a fish on that rod. So what I'm getting at is I'll very routinely have a big paddle in the spread, even if they're not biting big paddles. And I usually have it far back in the spread. I'll run a long lead, put it on my deepest rod, and it's just kind of out back. And even when they're not really biting paddles and flies, that rod gets bit once a day. I mean, it will go. But I think it works as an attractor. I think having some commotion in the water with something that's got a big rotation just gets their attention, and I think it brings fish in to look at other presentations. So I think that's where a rotator is. Even on a spoon bite, if it's a spoon bite, I still have a rotator in the water, almost always.
Well, my theory on rotators, what that looks like, if you ever fish the river for browns, especially, and a brown comes up, if you're not on a dry fly, like on a nymph pattern, or if you're fishing, some kind of bait, when that brown comes up and turns on that bait, if it misses it flat, you see that flash. And it's, kings are feeding the same way, and you can see that flash from a long distance. And I really think that flash, it just looks like
Another fish chasing it.
A fish eating, and then other fish are going to come in to see what that's all about.
And we see that on the Panoptics
Yeah,
too.
we watch it happen.
You watch it happen on Panoptics, where a fish comes in and misses, and then another rod will fire like right afterwards.
Or
And
you'll
it's not
see
the same fish.
You'll have a rotator on one of your downriggers, and your downriggers are very defined on Panoptics. You can see it. You see the cannonballs, and you'll see a fish come in and it's swimming right by the diver, or right by the downrigger, and then all of a sudden you see it drift off and core takes off. Or your high diver takes off, or whatever. So there's 100% fish are coming in and looking at it, and whether or not it's actually making them bite other things, it is bringing them into what you're doing. It's like the same thing like when you're trolling in the dark, and you have a ton of glow stuff out. I think that's how you get fish into your, especially if you're in heavy congestion. The fish are going to congregate where they think a school of bait fish is, and they're going to fire when they can see. So.
Yeah, and I think there's a competitive. They have a competitive prey drive. So, prey drive is what we rely on to trigger them to bite these lures. And it's that it may not be that they necessarily want to. It's that they can't not.
Yeah.
You're trying to get them get that reactionary prey drive bite, and when that happens, there's competition among them. So you get other bites. So if fish misses, another rod fires a different fish, but it's happening because he saw that other fish eat, and there's a competition for that bait. So, and I think that's what the flasher does. I agree with you. I think it triggers that competition prey drive that they can't not bite.
And they will follow for miles. I mean, it's not like they just come up and that's it. I mean, they're miles. And you ever notice you're trolling along, and all of a sudden you change direction, all of a sudden it triggers a bite because they feel it's getting away from them, or you raise the rigger up, and they think it's getting away, and it's, man.
Or speed up.
I mean, I'm fortunate on my riggers. I got jig mode, and when lake is flat, it really helps.
Yeah.
I'll vary the speed a lot for that same reason. You see a fish follow, you speed up, bang, to hit it. And I think you can trigger a lot of bites by changing something.
Yeah.
Slow down, speed up, change direction, change angle, change depth. but make changes. If you're marking fish and you're not getting them to bite and they're not biting, you got to do something different. So make one change at a time, but make changes until you figure it out.
And most of the time, like if I'm marking fish and I'm not catching fish, the first thing I do is turn a little bit, like 1 or 2 degrees, 3 degrees, not 5, not 10, like very small turns, and just tiny little changes. Or I'll switch motors and I'll throw my other bag in, or I'll do something. I want to make a change to make the boat react differently to make that bait, because I'm usually pretty confident in the baits I have in the water. If they're not getting bit and there's fish underneath me, there's something else wrong. And it's almost always speed. I'll change direction first, then I'll start changing my speed. And I'm not afraid to go slower. I know a lot of guys just keep bumping it up until they get bit, but I like to go really slow.
Yeah.
Anyways, so.
I take a little bit different approach and maybe a little more simplistic approach, just because I don't have that level of electronics on the boat. But if I mark a fish and I think it's come up to one of those riggers or to a dipsy, I'll wait till that mark's about 3/4 of the way across the screen or almost coming off, and then I'm making that turn, and I'm turning to the right or I'm turning to the left, and I'm using my autopilot dial to do this, and I might do that once or twice, and then I might even do a speed up, but just like these guys are saying, that change will trigger a bite. Not every time, but it does work.
Yeah, the speed direction thing is, I mean, it's just full circle back to it. You start paying attention to it, you'll catch more fish. 100% you'll catch more fish. Maybe just one more, but.
Some days that's all you need.
All right, well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you picked up some top secrets here on our rotators and kind of how we're rigging them, how we're running them. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Pound the like button. I don't know. I'm so bad at this. Smash that like button. There you go. I'll put a little hammer there down. Anyways, hope you enjoyed what you saw. Big shout out to Bush Light and also Capt Chucks for all the support that they give us. Make sure you check Bush Light out and also Capt Chucks. You can check them out online right here. All right, we'll see you next time.